I live in Portland, Oregon, in a one-bedroom off Killingsworth above a barber who plays old soul on Saturdays and Motown on Sundays. I'm a shipping lead at a beverage distributor near the airport, a title that makes my mother think I have an office. What I actually have is a reflective vest, a stubborn forklift that turns left like it's negotiating, and a clipboard that says incident report at the top even on days that behave. I like the routine because it's louder than the part of my brain that inventories everything I've done wrong and the interest it's accruing. The night it happened, it had rained all week and then stopped, the road a black ribbon under sodium lights. I took the Fremont because I always do, because I like how the river looks from high up, like it's managing its job without me. From the bridge, the city pretends to be harmless. You can't see the arguments, just the reflections. I was thinking about the grocery list taped to my fridge: milk, coffee, paper towels, and about child support numbers the state recalculates like a math teacher with a grudge. My son, Manny, had texted 2 hours earlier. "Did you read my essay? It's due at midnight." I had quickly. I'd thumbed, "Proud of you." Fixed the last sentence. Then my phone buzzed on the passenger seat again. A new text lit the car. "Mom sent form. Can you sign? The family law kind of form. The we're gonna be polite while slicing kind." I tell people this part first, the part where the 2 seconds felt soft. I reached to flip the phone face down so it would stop blooming light against my leg. That's it. That's the choice, and it wasn't even a glamorous one. Not a call. Not an emergency. Just a rectangle that asked to be turned. The sound didn't so much happen as arrive all at once. Metal folded. My hood wrinkled like a bedsheet. The windshield veined with white cracks that looked, stupidly, like a map of a river I didn't know. I felt my own voice say, "Oh no," and it sounded like it came from someone standing behind me. I braked so hard the seatbelt bit the spot under my collarbone where I keep old mistakes. The car skidded crooked in the lane and caught where the bridge pitches slightly. A bicycle lay on its side a car length back. The rear wheel spun like a slow clock. The rider, he was a he, I remember the narrow hands, was on the pavement, limbs arranged by physics instead of preference. I ran. I was already, somehow, on with 911, the word accident dropping out of my mouth like teeth. The man made a sound when I reached him. A wet, surprised cough that meant he was here. "Hey," I said, because that's what you say to the living. "Hey man, I'm here." His grocery bag had split. Oranges rolled toward the gutter, tapping the curb with that hollow baseball sound. I remember the oranges and the smell. Rain and brake dust and a little blood metal. He wore reflective bands around his ankles, cheap Velcro catching threads on his socks. His eyes were open but far away, the way some windows look like mirrors at night. The dispatcher told me how to keep his airway open, told me not to move him, told me help was less than 3 minutes out. I believed her because I needed to, and because the sirens started as soon as she said it, like her voice called them. A delivery truck slowed and angled its bulk as a shield. The driver threw his hazard lights on, and the blinking turned us into a stage. He tossed me a jacket. "For shock," he said, as if shock were a dog you could cover. Another driver handed me a first aid kit with gauze so white it looked wrong in the rain. I said my name to the man on the ground like we were being introduced. "I'm James. I'm staying." He made a sound I could almost translate as okay. Though I know that's me retrofitting meaning onto noise. EMTs shouldered me aside in that efficient, kind way. One of them said, "You did right by stopping." Another said, "Step back, sir." A police officer asked me if I'd been drinking, and I said no. He asked if I looked at my phone, and I said yes. He wrote something on a pad. The scratch of the pen sounded like a door closing. They loaded the rider into the ambulance, plastic curtains swallowing him, doors clapping shut. The siren screamed and then receded, and the bridge went back to being a bridge. The officer told me to move my car to the shoulder and wait. The delivery driver squeezed my shoulder and said, "You stayed." Like that was currency I could spend. I stood in the wash of hazard lights and watched my breath go pale, as if I were the one who needed proof of life. I called my mother from the precinct because terror makes you revert to the old architecture. She still has a landline in Salem, says cords are honest. When I told her I'd hit a cyclist on the Fremont, she said, "Are you safe?" In that order. And when I said yes, but it didn't feel like it, she told me, tell the truth, then tell it again. Moms have a way of making commandments that sound like household chores. I gave my statement. The officer wrote slowly, like each word had to be lifted. He read it back while I nodded like a man in a training video. They handed me a pink copy of my life written badly, which felt correct. I sat in my car and stared at the spiderweb of the windshield. At the chalky airbag dust settled on the dash like a cheap winter. An orange had made the trip from the road to under my seat. I set it on my knee, and for a minute it felt like a confession. At home, I texted my ex that the child support transfer would be late because my car was undrivable and I was temporarily unfit for normal. I didn't send the second sentence. I sent Manny the message I'd meant to send before everything. Proud of you. We'll look at your conclusion tonight. And he wrote back in the morning, it's okay. I got an A. I cried then, small and tidy, because relief and shame can live in the same face. The writer's name was Colin. An officer called midday to tell me, condition is serious. Family notified. We'll be in touch. I Googled him and the city and bike, and nothing useful appeared because not every tragedy gets indexed. I called the hospital. They said only family. I hovered a finger over a donate button on a cycling club page and closed it like a coward. Law found me anyway. Certified letter. Negligence? Gross. Words that wear boots. I brought it to a lawyer with a chin that said he ate nails. He told me to stop calling. Stop imagining I could speed anything up by wanting it. You're lucky, he said, meaning no death, no flight, no bottle in the console. It didn't feel like luck. He said, you will pay, but you will live. Those are not the same. At the warehouse, I asked to be put on receiving, where the work is honest. Labels, angles, the sweet click when fork slot under a pallet. Luis, my supervisor, looked at me for the rest of the story without asking. I told him enough. Take the week if you need it, he said, which is how bosses tell you they can't spare two. I took 2 days and then went back because routine is a kindness. Nights were bad. Every horn was a siren warming up. Every cyclist a mirror I couldn't look into. I found a support group in a community center that smelled like dry erase markers and gym floor. We sat in a circle like a play about confession. A woman in a denim jacket had hit a deer and still couldn't sleep 2 years later. A man had rear-ended a couple at a light and got sued and then invited to their baby's baptism. We spoke out loud what we'd been muttering alone. I am the thing that hurt someone. The room didn't fix anything, but it kept the roof up. On day 6, a voicemail from a number I didn't know. This is Anna. I'm Colin's partner. He's in surgery again. I have your number from the police report. I don't know what I want except to make sure you understand he's not data. I called back. No answer. She texted, not today. Maybe later this week. I stared at the words until they turned into shapes, reflective bands at the edge of my vision. When we finally spoke, her voice had the steadiness of someone holding an umbrella in a squall. She listed injuries like a poem made of nouns. Ribs, lung, pelvis, spine. I said I was sorry like it was a language. She said, he rides at night because it's the 1 hour he gets to himself. He's not a fanatic. He's a person. I said, I know. And she said, you don't. And she was right. She asked me not to contact her again unless through the lawyers. I said okay. I wanted to fix a thing you can't fix. I scrubbed my sink. I returned cans. I got the windshield replaced and asked the tech if the new glass would be as strong as the factory. Stronger, he said, which made me suspicious of optimism. I started putting my phone in the trunk when I drove. That felt theatrical at first, then sane. Change didn't arrive like a clean cut. It came like erosion, slow and not always where I expected. The oranges showed up in my dreams. Rolling, bright, trying to find the gutter. I woke to the sound of them bumping the curb, that hollow baseball sound, and lay there counting until it faded. 2 months after the crash, my lawyer called to say Anna had asked about a restorative justice process. It's not common in cases like this, he said. And you don't have to agree. I said yes before he finished. He sighed the way people do when paperwork multiplies. Relief felt like air on a wound. The first meeting was just me and a facilitator named Ruth in a room with a tired peace lily and chairs that tried to be comfortable. She spoke like a good teacher, arranging complicated things into shapes you could hold. "This isn't about legal guilt," she said. "It's about human accountability. It doesn't replace consequences. It adds meaning to them." She asked me to tell the story, then to tell it again, emphasizing each place my choices showed up. I said phone, tired. I thought I could handle it. Then she asked me to tell it from Colin's imagined view. I said wind, plastic bag. The sound a car makes when it's already too late. I cried, not tidily. Ruth slid a box of tissues closer like a vote of confidence. Feeling better in that room felt obscene, but she said, "This is practice. Don't mistake rehearsal for performance." 3 weeks later, with Ruth at the table, I met Anna and Colin in a room that faced a mural of hands. He sat in a wheelchair on a cushion that looked like a raft of bubbles. He had the kind of beard you grow when razors are tasks. A pin shaped like a tiny orange slice was on his jacket. I stood to shake his hand, and he laughed once. Not cruelly, just at the ridiculous etiquette of disasters, and I sat. He said, "I don't remember much, which is a gift." Anna said, "I remember enough for both of us." And the seriousness in her eyes rearranged my spine. I talked first because I asked to. I said I looked away to flip a phone. I said I hit him. Not, there was a collision. Not, an accident occurred. I said the verbs and let them sit. I told him about Manny and about forklifts and about my mother saying chords are honest. I told him I would trade anything to unwind 2 seconds, including the version of myself that thought he could juggle air and steel. I didn't ask for forgiveness. Wanting it felt greedy. Colin asked questions that were not traps. How long were your eyes off the road? Do you ride a bike? What did you do first after? Details matter because they keep us from turning each other into symbols. He told me about his job at a print shop, how he loves the moment a stack of new flyers warms his hands, how he rides at night because the roads exhale. He said, "People keep telling me it could have been worse. I don't know how to answer without being rude." I said, "It could have been better." And he nodded like I had solved a small math problem but not the big one. Ruth asked what accountability might look like. Anna said, "No excuses." Colin said, "Make it matter." I said, "Tell me what that is and I will do it, even if it ruins sleep." We made a plan. Insurance would do what insurance does, and I'd add monthly payments to cover what it wouldn't. More than money, there would be work. Saturday mornings at an adaptive cycling nonprofit on the east side, where volunteers modify bikes for people whose bodies argue with standard frames. I would sweep floors, wrench, listen, get told when to shut up. We picked a date. I marked it on my fridge calendar with a small orange dot. I told Manny, he's 15, made of flint and glass. "So you're fixing bikes because you hit a guy on a bike?" he asked, and the word hit knocked the breath out of me. "Yes," I said. "Also because he asked me to make his pain matter to people who aren't him." Manny squinted like he was looking into bright. "That seems fair," he said. "Teenagers bless you with fairness like it costs them something." The first Saturday smelled like chain lube and roasted coffee from the shop next door. An old Schwinn came in with a seat bent like a question mark. A kid named Eli climbed into a recumbent trike decorated with superhero stickers. I learned to measure from shoulder to wrist, to adjust crank length, to tighten a bolt without snapping its pride. A man with one leg taught me how to listen for good friction. "It's a sandpaper sound," he said. "You'll hear it." Colin came by once, and we both tried a hand cycle, wheeling in a slow 2-man parade around the block while a dog barked at us like we were breaking a law he knew and we didn't. We laughed at the corner and didn't call it healing. We called it Saturday. None of this erased the bridge. Colin's left leg doesn't obey like it used to. He will always know weather in his hip. I will always see oranges when the light hits a curb. But there is a path between us now that isn't only the arc of steel. It runs through a room with a tired plant, through a warehouse that smells like rubber and promise, through a morning that tastes like decent coffee and the metallic tang of effort. It is a small path. It is the only one I trust. A year and a half later, Manny got his learner's permit. The DMV clerk took his photo at an angle that made his ears look heroic. I wanted to bubble wrap the city. Instead I said the boring holy things. Phone in the trunk. Eyes on the road. We'll practice until your hands know where you are without looking. He grinned like the kid I buckled into a car seat with dinosaurs on the straps. The first time out, we drove to the empty stadium lot after dark. White lines like sheet music. He braked too firmly, then too softly, then found the spot where the car's weight became a conversation. I hate how much of life is 2-second decisions, he said, palms at 10 and 2 like a poster. That's because they are, I said. He nodded and didn't look at me because he was busy being new. By the third time, we were on Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard practicing lane changes while I pressed my foot into the phantom brake only 3 times. We stopped for pho at a place that serves broths like arguments and sat in a fogged window. He told me about a girl in history class who writes in green ink and about the panic that lifts its head when the teacher says volunteers. He asked if I had been scared the night of the bridge or if I didn't have time. Both, I said, and he nodded again, like we were building a shared dictionary. In late fall, after the leaves did their gold drama and went to brown, we crossed the hawthorn behind a Subaru that tapped its brakes like a stutter. A cyclist slid past on the right, legal, just sudden, and my knee hit the underside of the dash because bodies are honest. Manny kept straight. He squeezed the wheel once like holding a hand. I saw him in the mirror before he was there, he said. I exhaled a breath I might have been holding for a year. That winter, Colin texted a picture of a lopsided snowman with capers for eyes. My leg is the weatherman, he wrote. He says this storm will be smug. I sent back Manny scraping ice with a library card because we'd lost the scraper again. Colin replied with a thumbs up and a small orange emoji. I put my phone away and drove with both hands, trunk locked, old habit turned ritual. On the anniversary Ruth told us to keep the date of the meeting, not the crash. We got coffee at a place that doesn't play music because the machines are the music. Colin walked with a cane he calls suggestions. Anna rolled her eyes at him with the kind of affection that leaves room. We talked about geese, about which bridge has the best sunset, about how the barista's tattoos look like a map of pretend islands. When we left, Colin tapped the counter twice, thanking a surface for holding him up. I started doing that too, lightly like knocking on wood. The nonprofit asked if I could help build an adaptive bike for a man returning to riding after a spinal injury. We measured seat angle and argued about crank length like philosophers. When he came to try it, there was a wobble and then a line, that delicious moment when momentum becomes a partner. His laugh started deep and came out wide. I forgot this part, he said. Me too, I said, and I meant more than bikes. Manny got a dishwashing job at a Thai place on Alberta and came home smelling like cilantro and victory. He put his tips in a jar shaped like a bear because we never outgrow the need for containers for hope. He asked to borrow my car to drive to band practice in a friend's basement. Mostly bass lines and earnestness. I made him promise trunk phone, sober driver, home by 11. He said yes and hugged me quick, the way teens hug when they suspect love might be contagious. The night a call did come late, it wasn't about Manny. A volunteer coordinator asked if the Saturday crew could open early. There'd been a crash on Powell, a cyclist down, a memorial ride planned, a loaner hand cycle needed for someone who wanted to move through grief without walking it. We went in the dark and worked until our fingers went black with grease. I thought about how sorrow learns the routes of a city and how arguments on the internet about lanes and laws feel like mistaking maps for weather. On the way home, a rain began that barely deserved the name. I parked on the hawthorn and stepped out, leaning on the rail. Across the water, the Fremont's cables drew forgiveness in geometry. A cyclist rolled by slow, light blinking an honest metronome. Without thinking, I lifted a hand the way drivers do in small towns. He lifted his back. It was nothing and also everything. Here is what I know, and it is not a moral so much as a list. Put the phone in the trunk. Let the buzz die. Practice until your hands get wise. Speak the apology out loud even when the room is empty. Pay what you owe with actual dollars and the kind you can't count. Show up Saturday morning even if you worked late. Sweep the floor like it matters because it does. When I close my eyes, I still see oranges roll and hear them bump the curb. Sometimes that's punishment. Mostly it's a reminder that bright things try to get away from careless hands. I am a man in Portland with a job that touches boxes and a son learning to be a person in public. I'm not the hero here. The hero is the decision I make every time the screen lights and I leave it dark. The hero is Colin, learning his new leg's language, making space for weather and for jokes. The hero is the bridge itself, quiet, competent, holding both of us without asking who deserves the view. If there's a lesson, it's small and repeatable. I stayed. Then I kept staying. Then I put the staying to work.